Dr. Clark, discussion.
Yeah, I'm just going to say what I've said previously in regards to some of these amendments that have been made in regards to Black and Brown individual contributions. Is it seems like everything that's related to Black Americans, Mexican Americans, Muslim Americans, anybody who has contributed to history is being whitewashed to make things comfortable instead of what's right. Ruby Bridges' story is instrumental to how we are able to sit together right now in this moment on this day is to talk about education. So I think when we strip what her contribution and what she actually did and how she had to endure lots of BS, I think we need to be able to specifically talk about that.
Mr. Chairman,
For what purpose?
decorum. We have children watching.
You never have decorum.
You're out of order.
That was a tense minute out of about 9 hours of a Texas Board of Education meeting held on June 26, 2026. Before I explain what happened in the meeting, let me give you some background. The Texas State Board of Education periodically reviews and revises the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills Document. The Essential Knowledge and Skills Document serves as the state K-12 curriculum standards. The standards set out what students should know as the result of attending Texas schools. The Board of Education is currently reviewing and revising the social studies standards for all grades. The process now is winding down, having started a review and revision process in 2025. Many people have tuned in to the board's deliberations due to the addition of Bible readings to the standards. However, matters of equity in teaching about the contributions of minorities to Texas history have also sparked controversy. Such was the case in this part of the meeting. Board member Dr. Tiffany Clark was reacting to a proposal to delete the reason Ruby Bridges was considered a brave woman from the Texas Social Studies curriculum. The Board of Education had spent the better part of the day considering such proposals, and at about 4 p.m, another committee member wanted to delete this description of Ruby Bridges. Quote, "The student is expected to describe Ruby Bridges as a young African American student who bravely walked into an all-white school so that Black and white children could learn together." End quote. The motion by Chair Aaron Kinsey was to include Ruby Bridges in another requirement with Claudette Colvin and Rosa Parks, and to characterize all three of them as brave women who protested unfair laws. For those who don't know, Ruby Bridges is an African-American woman who, when she was a first-grade student in New Orleans, was the first Black child to attend an all-white school in the American South. She walked into the William Frantz Elementary School on November 14, 1960, escorted by federal marshals. White parents pulled their children from the school, and most teachers refused to teach Bridges. In fact, she was taught most of the year by just one teacher. Bridges was very brave, but her story deserves to be separated from Parks and Colvin. Even the description in the Texas standards is a minimization of what happened. Nonetheless, the conservative members of the board wanted to strip that out. They called it streamlining. Yet another euphemism for whitewashing, in my opinion. Shortly, I'm going to play the entire sequence of events from the motion to strip out the description of Bridges' bravery to the vote. Why am I doing that? This week's segment corresponds to the chapter in The Christian Past That Wasn't about whitewashing history. The myth I address in Chapter 8 is America's virtues justify America's sins. I submit that America's substantial virtues do not justify the national sins of the nation. These cannot be waved away or whitewashed. In this clip from the Texas State Board of Education, you will see just one small example of how such whitewashing takes place in broad daylight, covered by excuses, rationalizations, and euphemisms. Oh, and the children are indeed watching. My plan here is to play the entire segment where the Ruby Bridges requirement was discussed. I will stop the narrative and offer comments throughout. After this segment, I have an interview with Staci Childs Davis, one of the board members who was in the meeting. I also have some of my interview with Jemar Tisby to conclude the segment on the topic of whitewashing history. As the clip begins, the first voice you will hear is Chair of the committee, Aaron Kinsey. He calls on Will Hickman, who makes the Ruby Bridges motion on Kinsey's behalf.
Member Hickman, for what purpose?
Did I have my hand? I'd like to make amendments, please.
Recognized.
Chairman, just to let you know, I'm carrying your water here, so if anyone's checking, these were filed by the chairman, and I will be offering them on his behalf. First one is in grade 1, 16A.
When board member Hickman says to strike C, he is asking the board to strike the following requirement. Quote, the student is expected to describe Ruby Bridges as a young African-American student who bravely walked into an all-white school so that black and white children could learn together. End quote. You will now hear Hickman's rationale and board discussion of the motion.
Chair, should I read? So in
Please.
A, this is 16A, a streamlining, combining A and C together. So it would read, describe Claudette Colvin, Rosa Parks, and Ruby Bridges as brave women who stood against unfair treatment. And then it would strike C. And I don't know if A has that on the screen.
Second.
Okay.
Motion, a second. You want to speak to it? Member Hickman.
Sure, Chair. This is just combining the two concepts and putting Ruby Bridges together for streamlining purposes in first grade.
Okay. Member Little for discussion.
For staff, does this lose specificity? I mean, against unfair treatment. I mean, that.
There.
Can I answer? The other night, we took out the definition of segregation in this grade. And so when we took that out, we no longer define what that means at an age-appropriate level for this grade. And so that's why I filed it to take segregation out and present it in a different way. Member Childs, discussion.
Yes, I'm having a hard time with you guys crossing out C specifically because Ruby Bridges was in the first grade when this happened. So to say that it's not age appropriate for first graders to learn about this, when she did that, she was the same age as them, is just quite awful. So I stand in opposition.
That last voice you heard was Staci Childs Davis, member from Houston. Did you hear the emotion in her voice? She sounds incredulous that the board would think Texas first graders should not learn something that a first grade child, Ruby Bridges, endured to blaze a trail for other black students. Listen again to what she said.
I'm having a hard time with you guys crossing out C specifically because Ruby Bridges was in the first grade when this happened. So to say that it's not age appropriate for first graders to learn about this, when she did that, she was the same age as them, is just quite awful. So I stand in opposition.
If first grader Ruby Bridges can confront racism in 1960, so can Texas first graders in 2026. Who does it help to streamline this out of the standards? As I was listening to this the first time through, I had the sense that I was watching whitewashing in real time. No one rang a bell and signaled it was coming. It was given an official-sounding name and done as if it was a benefit. As we will see, this streamlining didn't escape notice of others on the board. Next, what sounds like placating and distraction begins.
Member Child said Ruby Bridges has been moved from C to A. So Ruby Bridges is still covered and characterized in this statement as a brave woman.
May I respond, Chairman?
Member Childs.
What I'm specifically talking about is Vice Chairwoman's little comment about the specificity of why she was brave and what she had to endure. I think that part is important for first graders to know.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Member Maynard, discussion?
and maybe that if I can get Ms. Little to kind of opine on this, is that just in terms of the development of instructional material and what that looks like, is that the writers of that, when you say unfair treatment and they attach that to a name, the curriculum writers and the material writer are going to go and they're going to unearth that and they're going to flesh that out based on the historical account. Am I correct in that? So just in terms of what actually happened there is not actually going to be lost by this amendment. Is just in terms of how that's going to be actually expressed in the manifestation of these standards.
May I?
Member Little, discussion.
I was really thinking, Mr. Maynard, more about the test, the STAR test. How's that going to be worded if they were to choose a question from this TEAC to test on the STAR test?
Board member Tom Maynard and another member brought up administrative issues which are peripheral to the substantive matter raised by board member Childs. Maynard wants to placate the righteous anger of whitewashing by saying there's nothing to worry about, we need to trust teachers. My answer would have been, then why have standards at all? Just tell them to teach good history and avoid 9-hour meetings. Then another member is worried about how to make up a test question about Ruby Bridges. We can't teach about reality because the omniscient Board of Education can't figure out a good test question right now on June 26th. In my view, these moves are designed to distract away from the whitewashing as it takes place. However, Member Tiffany Clark doesn't take the bait. You heard this at the opening, but hear it again.
Dr. Clark, discussion.
Yeah, I'm just going to say what I've said previously in regards to some of these amendments that have been made in regards to Black and Brown individual contributions. It seems like everything that's related to Black Americans, Mexican Americans, Muslim Americans, anybody who has contributed to history is being whitewashed to make things comfortable instead of what's right. Ruby Bridges' story is instrumental to how we are able to sit together right now in this moment on this day is to talk about education. So I think when we strip what her contribution and what she actually did and how she had to endure lots of BS, I think we need to be able to specifically talk about that.
Mr. Chairman,
For what purpose?
decorum, we have children watching.
You never have decorum.
You're out of order.
Given what Dr. Clark from DeSoto, Texas said, I suspect there were other instances where she felt the committee stripped out contributions of minorities. By nearly 4:30 in the afternoon, she seemed ready to express her perception of whitewashing. She made another point which seemed to go right over the heads of her listeners. She brought into the room how historically extraordinary it is to have Black and brown people represented on the Board of Education. She said what Ruby Bridges did was instrumental in her being there, with a seat at the table. And what was the reaction of the white conservative majority on the board? some kind of odd appeal to decorum. Board member Julie Pickering from Pearland moved to distract the focus from the issues raised by Clark and Childs by huffing about decorum. Was it because Clark said Ruby Bridges had to go through BS? Really? That was what brought about efforts to silence Clark? Or was it Clark's perception that the board was systematically stripping out contributions of minorities? And really, what children are spending their late afternoon watching the Texas State Board of Education meeting debate social studies curriculum? After a long pause, Chairman Kinsey asks if there are any other discussion, and he recognizes member Geraldo Reveles.
Is there other discussion?
To the chair.
Member of us, discussion.
I want to echo Dr. Clark's sentiments. I think there's a specific way we treat TEKs that are related to a specific type of Texan experience, and the way we treat it to TEKs related to experiences that are perhaps in the minority. I think that's telling of this whole process that we've encountered for the last year with social studies. I think this is exactly what we were concerned about. And it's showing of the type of commitment we're making to every single child in our state, that we're not willing to give all voices a place in our classrooms. And I just cannot support this. And this is why I keep voting no, despite criticisms, because this is not right for all Texas kids. And we were not elected just to represent the supermajority. We were we were elected to represent every child in Texas.
Chair.
Can I be recognized to call the question?
Just one moment. I do want to respond to something, because I went through and tracked some of this. At least I did this before the meeting. And before the meeting, slavery was mentioned over 60 times, civil rights 73, Native Americans 70. So I think the characterization that those topics have been stripped out is not correct. I don't have the numbers from today. I did not have time at midnight last night to count it from earlier in the week, but I disagree with the assertion that Dr. Clark is making. Is there any other discussion?
After member Reveles supports the perception of his fellow board members, Chairman Kinsey cites the number of times slavery and various minorities are mentioned in the standards. These must seem like big numbers to him. However, they mean nothing in isolation. There's no way to contextualize these numbers. What if accurate history required twice or three times as many mentions? We just don't know. Furthermore, he is the one who made the motion to reduce the number by combining requirements. Instead of dealing with Ruby Bridges and the perceptions of the minority members, the majority members of the board launched distractions and rationalizations. Next, member Marissa Perez-Diaz calls for broad representation of all Texans and speaks against removing the Ruby Bridges requirement.
Member Perez-Diaz for discussion.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to sit and claim that I know how many TEKs have been removed that recognize Black and Brown contributions, Asian contributions. But what I will ask of us moving forward is, as we make decisions about what is pulled and what is implemented in our standards, that we really think about the student population across Texas and what it means to ensure that we're teaching proper history and the proper story of Texas. You know, I know everybody around this room is a proud Texan, myself included. And to be a Texan means to be all of these individuals and all of the contributions that have made this state what it is. And so while I will say that there's notation across our standards of slavery and the civil rights movement, I think the depth at which we go into these particular items is lacking versus some of the other topics that we delve pretty deeply into. And so, again, I'll stand against this amendment because for all of the reasons that my colleagues have mentioned, particularly Member Childs, this is an incredibly critical piece of history that matters at the first grade level.
Is there further discussion? Are you ready to vote? All those in favor, please show by raising your hand. 6, thank you. All those opposed, please show by raising your hand. 7, 6, 7, the motion fails. You have further amendments, Member Hickman?
As it turned out, the amendment to remove the information about Ruby Bridges failed by one vote. By one vote, the reason Ruby Bridges was a brave first grade girl will be taught to Texas first grade students. Although the vote on Ruby Bridges worked out for good, there were other votes on contributions of minority Texans. I was able to speak to Staci Childs Davis more about her reaction to the debate over Ruby Bridges and the overall experience of the curriculum review process. First, I asked her about her reaction in the meeting and how she feels about it now.
I'll first start off with it's so ironic that you joined in on that particular moment. I've had a lot of people reach out and they could kind of tell I was emotional and they're like, thank you for fighting through, your emotions to kind of get that through. It failed by one vote, blah, blah, blah. But I think the reason why I got so emotional about that one and the whitewashing that took place all week is because there's this undertone of like Black children not being children, or like Black children not being as valuable or as precious and as sweet and as innocent as like children are. And that was like, you saw it in real time, right? Where Ruby Bridges, who was a 7-year-old girl, was attempted to be placed with women. Ruby Bridges was 7 when she did that. She was a child. And they said, oh, she's like Claudette Colvin and she's like Rosa Parks. They're all brave women. No, she was not a woman. She was a girl. And I can articulate it better now. I'm a few days removed from it. But yeah, it was a lot of whitewashing and it's a lot of like this undertone of like, we all will get over it, but we have to protect our children because our children are precious. Was Ruby Bridges not precious? Are our first graders that read about Ruby Bridges that look like Ruby Bridges not as precious as yours? Should her story not be heralded in the canon of Texas history because she's not worth it? She was a child. And that really frustrates me because that echoes the academic achievement of Black kids in Texas, which there are more Black kids in Texas than any other state in the union. The academic achievement should not be where it is. Well, duh. Look at what they're doing to history. So every time I go into a social studies class or maybe a language arts class, I'm reading like this. What would want to push me to achieve? I don't feel like I can based on what I've read.
I asked Childs Davis her thoughts on what was behind whitewashing in this meeting.
I just thought about it. I think right when you said that, something just clicked to me. I don't know why I never thought about this, but I think, maybe to some people who subscribe to what we know as Christian nationalism, want to be blemish free like Christ, because we know that we're imperfect and we're supposed to strive to be like Christ. So maybe in getting rid of past blemishes or coming across as blemish free is just as important as being blemish free, in the past and the present.
In the Christian past that wasn't, I raised this very issue. I quote social psychologists Carol Tavris and Elliot Aronson when they discuss how memory often serves as a self-justifying historian. I apply that to the way Christian nationalists often whitewash the ugly parts of American history. I say in the book, quote, if you are invested in crafting an attractive portrait of American history, there is much that requires such justification, end quote. The struggle over what to teach about Ruby Bridges illustrates that justification in action. The Texas School Board and Ruby Bridges is one local instance of attempted whitewashing. On a national scale, Donald Trump is leading the charge to remove all the nastiness from American history in favor of what he calls patriotic education. He wants schools and museums to focus on the positive aspects of America, to the point where he issued executive orders to try to control the content of historical presentations.
To combat the toxic left-wing propaganda in our schools, I announced last week that we're launching a pro-American lesson plan for students called 1776 Commission. We will teach our children the truth about America, that we are the most exceptional nation on the face of the earth, and we are getting better and better all the time. We got it. No party can lead America that will not teach our children to love America.
The only path to national unity is through our shared identity as Americans. That is why it is so urgent that we finally restore patriotic education to our schools. Under our leadership, the National Endowment for the Humanities has awarded a grant to support the development of a pro-American curriculum that celebrates the truth about our nation's great history.
In The Christian Past That Wasn't, I say this about patriotic education. Quote, one of the executive orders signed by Donald Trump in the early days of his second term was a mandate that, quote, patriotic education, end quote, be provided in public schools. In that order, patriotic education is defined as a presentation of American history marked by four characteristics. First, the presentation must be, quote, an accurate, honest, unifying, inspiring, and ennobling characterization of America's founding and foundational principles, end quote. Patriotic educators must show that, quote, the United States has admirably grown closer to its noble principles throughout its history, end quote. Lessons must present the concepts that, quote, commitment to America's aspirations is beneficial and justified, and that celebration of America's greatness and history is proper, end quote. In essence, the order invites teachers to whitewash American history or risk losing federal funding. With this executive order, Trump made American history even more of a battleground than it already was. History teachers must wrestle with how much truth about America's founding they can speak before some government watcher will declare the presentation not inspiring or ennobling enough. This executive order sounds like the educational goal of a totalitarian nation where teachers are expected to parrot the party line. It reads like a decree mandating that teachers teach and students believe that the virtues of America justify any harm done to minorities by the majority. Christian nationalists have a friend in President Trump, and with this and other executive actions targeting national parks and the Smithsonian museums, he is engaging in a systematic effort to make the Christian past that wasn't the law of the land, end quote. Trump has not limited his meddling with history to schools.
We want the museums to talk about the history of our country in a fair manner, not in a woke manner or in a racist manner.
In a social media post, Trump said museum exhibits were, quote, out of control, where everything discussed is about how horrible our country is, about how bad slavery was, and about how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been, end quote. One of the key battlegrounds has been the one-time residence of President George Washington in Philadelphia. Trump ordered a series of posters describing the lives of 9 enslaved people who lived there to be removed. He wanted them to be replaced with something more positive. This spring, however, a federal judge ordered them to be restored. However, on Thursday, June 18th, a federal appeals court ruled that the Trump administration can replace an exhibit at the president's house that described the lives of the 9 enslaved people. Philadelphia's mayor vowed to fight the whitewashing of the exhibit.
Good afternoon, Philadelphia. This is your mayor, Sherelle Parker, and I want to talk with you about an important federal court ruling released today on the city's lawsuit involving the President's House exhibit on Independence Mall in our historic district. Unfortunately, the United States Third Circuit Court of Appeals reversed a lower court ruling that the city won in February, which ordered the federal government to reinstall a series of interpretive panels at the President's House that told the powerful history of how 9 enslaved Africans were held in slavery in the executive residence by then President George Washington. Today, the Third Circuit Court ruled against the city and ruled that the federal government had the legal right to determine what panels were installed at the President's house. Philadelphia, I need to make this plain, and I need you to hear me on this. I will pursue every legal action possible in efforts to reverse this decision. We cannot and we will not rest until the full story of American history, including the existence of slavery at the President's house here in our great city of Philadelphia, the birthplace of democracy, is told for our nation and, quite frankly, the world to see. I will continue to fight along with the allies who have been involved with the President's house from the very beginning, including the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition, led by our own Michael Cord, the Black Journey, and other citizens who feel passionately that there is only one way to tell American history, and that is to tell the truth. We will keep you posted. Thank you for taking the time to listen.
Someone who knows a lot about the history of whitewashing is historian Jemar Tisby. In an interview done several months ago, I asked Jemar about the Trump administration's efforts to make history less disturbing.
This is one of the things that we have to emphasize is as they're scrubbing U.S. history, whether from White House websites or school curricula or whatever, nature abhors a vacuum. They're not just taking away this history, they're going to fill it with a whitewashed, inaccurate history. And it becomes much harder to undo bad teaching than to start from a solid foundation to begin with. So I don't think we've talked about it enough in the public sphere that, we'll say, oh, it's awful. They took down Jackie Robinson's military record or Medgar Evers' military record, whoever it might be. But also what they'll do is they'll propagandize the gap. They'll fill it with propaganda. And we're looking at 2026, 250-year anniversary of the Declaration. You and I both know the kind of absolute drivel that will come out of the White House to commemorate the supposed history of the United States. So we're just going to be inundated in a special way because of this anniversary for the whole year with propaganda that too many people are going to be ill-equipped to discern because they don't know the history in the first place to be able to distinguish between propaganda or whitewashed history and a more accurate, robust history. So I am not optimistic about those commemorations. Nevertheless, I'm excited to do what you're doing, which is continue to debunk some of this stuff and make sure that the truth gets out there.
Thanks, Jemar, and thank you for your recent recommendation of The Christian Past That Wasn't. If you want to get the book, go to christianpast.com. There are many buying options there. That's christianpast.com. want to thank Staci Childs Davis and Jemar Tisby for providing their expertise to the program today. I enjoyed talking to them and learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot and take away information you didn't have before. One thing I hope you come away with is that history isn't about telling a good story about America. It is about telling the whole story from all points of view. Christian nationalism depends on a truncated narrative where Christianity is always virtuous and the Americans are the good guys who always do the right thing. Speaking of Jemar, he reminds us this week at his Substack of something author James Baldwin said about patriotism. Here it is, quote, "I love America more than any other country in the world, and, for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually," end quote. This is what we must do. We must care enough to speak about what we see. We must participate. If we don't, we have given in to complacency and fear. We can never be sure how long we will have strength or ability to do it, so we must while we can. I'm aware that many of you will listen to this episode over the Independence Day holiday. I hope it's a safe one for you. I also commend to you Jemar's article about Baldwin. I will put a link to the essay in the show notes. Next week, I will take up the last myth about Christianity in public schools. This segment is a good transition to that one, I have to say. Just 2 more regular episodes to go. If you like the podcast, please tell a friend and leave us a lovely rating wherever you are listening. And as always, thanks for listening.